One, geography and early Japan. Your essential question is, how was Japan's early societies both isolated and influenced by China and Korea? So this is quite a large essential question. You want to make sure you cover all of these topics. Okay, geography shapes life in Japan. Japan is made up of a collection of islands, so it's not considered a mainland. China over here would be considered a mainland. Japan is a collection of islands off the coast of China and Korea. It's actually sunken volcanoes, so the volcanoes have sunk into the Pacific Ocean, and the tops of the volcanoes are actually where people live in Japan. Only 20% of the land is flat, so you can imagine that the actual farmable land is very slim. So there's not a whole lot of farmable land because most of it is very hilly. You could see right here the topography of it. Everything that's red, that means it's very high peaks. Green is the flat land, which is very, very minimal. The nearness to the sea, though, provides them with food, so lots of seafood. Living on the island separates them from the rest of Asia. Even though they are part of the Asian continent, they are separated because they are a chain of islands. This allows them to develop their own culture and social structure. So they're basically starting fresh, they're starting new, they are creating things that best fit their lifestyle here on the islands. So here we have Korea. This black arrow here is only about 100 miles away from Japan, and China is about 400 miles away. So we have Korea here, right off the edge of China, and then China is the large mainland. China and Korea, their cultures influence the new culture of Japan because they are the two closest countries. So they are getting influence from them, especially because they do a lot of trade with them. So as they trade, they're also trading ideas and cultures and religions and art, and not just trading for items. So early Japanese society, the earliest Japanese society was called the Ainu. You're going to read this section on page 200 in your book. It's only a couple of paragraphs long, and you're going to fill in the blanks on your Cornell notes about the Ainu. So the first Japanese people lived south of the Ainu. So the Ainu was a clan. That's one of your words for vocabulary. They were a clan that lived towards the north, and then other Japanese societies started to develop towards the south. These were small farming villages, and they were led by powerful clans or extended families. The village members had to obey and respect the clans. So the clans were kind of in charge of all the village members. Each clan had a chief to rule politically as well as had religious duties. So the chief would not only rule the government part of Japan, but they would also rule for their village, rule the religious duties. So the Shinto is going to be the Japanese religion that we're going to be studying, and they would perform ceremonies for the people. They believed that these chiefs were descendants of nature's spirits, which are called kami. So kami are nature's spirits. So they believed everything had a spirit. Trees had a spirit. Animals had a spirit. Very similar to animism that we studied in Africa. Very similar to that. And these were called kami. And this is a Shinto shrine right here. So Shinto are traditional religious rituals of Japan. They believe that everything in nature had spirits. This is the kami we were just talking about. Kami help people live free from harm. So they believe that if they gave things to the kami, they worship the water, that the water would provide for them. They worship the sky would provide for them. They worship the fish would provide for them. So they really did believe that everything had a spirit and that they were very honorable to those spirits. The shrines were built to honor them and perform ceremonies. You can see this Shinto shrine is built in the water. So this is where they would perform those ceremonies to honor the water. So this one is a video on Shinto. You will watch this on your own, and you'll take notes on the Shinto religion while viewing this video. There's a blank section on your Cornell Notes for that.
More than 100 people in Tokyo celebrated the new year. Okay,
there we go. All right, early Japanese society, the first emperors. So clans would battle each other to conquer land. We've seen this over and over throughout history. Yamato was the largest island, Yamato from the largest island, which is Honshu, had a strong military. So the Yamato clan had a very strong military, very strong army. They believed that they were descendants of the Kami, specifically the goddess of the sun. So they believed they were descendants of the goddess of the sun. By the 500s, Yamato extended their control over most of Honshu. So they had control over the largest island in Japan, which made them the strongest of all the clans. The leaders made themselves the emperors of all Japan. So the Japanese societies, this is going to answer your essential question. What did they learn from China and Korea? Japanese societies received little influence from Asia's mainland cultures. They did, however, bring things back to Japan, specifically from China and Korea, because they were the nearest neighbors. All of the other Asian mainland cultures were too far away to really have an impact on Japan. Rulers sent representatives to these countries to gain information. So you're going to take more notes from the caption here. So we have 3 things that they really brought from China and Korea: language, philosophy, and religion. So you will take notes from these 3 captions, also on page 201 of your book. Specifically, what did they learn from China based on these 3 topics? Okay, so changes in language. Early Japan did not have a written language because they were developing their own language. So it took a while to develop the actual written language. They learned to write in Chinese for obvious reasons, because that was one of the countries that they had the most contact with, even though they spoke Japanese. They wrote Chinese, they spoke Japanese. So this is really interesting too, because they use Chinese characters to represent the way they spoke in Japanese. So they are using the Chinese written language and then kind of tweaking it, kind of changing it a little bit into new Japanese characters. So Chinese and Japanese characters are actually very similar. So it's pretty interesting because the first Japanese history to ever be written was written in Chinese. So their own Japanese history was actually written in another language in the 700s. So if you were to read the first history of Japan, it's actually written in another language. It's written in Chinese, not Japanese. At the time, Chinese was the official language of Japan's government. It makes a lot of sense because that also is one of the main places that they traded with. So they did need to learn how to communicate with them. Changes in religion and philosophy. Prince Shotoku is regent for his aunt, the empress, from 593 to 621. So this is very similar to China, where empresses couldn't rule on their own. So her nephew, Prince Shotoku, was regent for her. Basically, he's stepping into the emperor role. So he's helping her rule because she's a woman and she's not allowed to rule. So he is aiding her in ruling Japan. He decided to send scholars to China to learn about their society and taught Japanese the idea of Confucianism. So they taught the Japanese the idea of Confucianism. You're going to write more notes about Confucianism on page from 203 in your textbook. So they also spread Buddhism by building temples and wrote commentaries about Buddhism. So we learned about Buddhism in the last chapter as well. Many still preferred Shintoism to Buddhism, but Buddhism became more popular, especially with the nobles. So the nobles took over that idea, that religion. Here's some more information about Prince Shotoku that you can read. Changes in government. You're going to read this section on page 203 in your textbook, and you are going to fill in the blanks on your notes. This is the Emma board. There's going to be a separate video for the Emma board, but you can always look through this also just to get an idea of what the art project's going to be, and then view that other video later. I hope you enjoyed learning about early Japan. Have a great day.